Hi guys, so welcome back, and hopefully I can get through this video without any loud distractions in the background. Maybe some background noise, but hopefully it's not too much. You guys can be able to focus in on the topic because this is one that's very passionate to me. Like, I feel so passionate about this topic, you guys. Like, polygamy. This is something that I've been wanting to talk about for the longest, and I just been holding it in because your girl been a little bit busy with school. I am in my final year of coursework of my PhD in clinical psychology, and I don't know if you guys have ever known someone who have completed a doctoral program, but it can be very exhausting. It's like a marathon. And so just imagine being like at the end of a marathon. That's like where I'm at right now. And I was thinking, because it's like just imagine putting so much time and energy in something, and you're working so hard, and you're going and you're going and you're going and you're going, and then you realize, like, I am here. I have arrived at the point that I've been working so hard for. So that's where I am right now, and it feels like it's so much feeling there. It feels amazing. It feels a little frightening. It's great, you guys. And so I'm grateful that I'm able to actually do this video right now, because, like I said, this is one I feel very passionate about. Polygamy. And I titled it Polygamy and Black Men, or Black Men and Polygamy, because I'm going to focus on two figures, maybe several, but two prominent figures within the black community that most of you guys already know about. You guys probably have heard of these two men, and when I speak their names, it's all in love. What I say about these men, all in love. They should know that I support them, I admire what they're doing, and everything. But of course, we all have our opinions, and I'm just going to give my perspective on black men and polygamy from what I have observed. And I'm going to approach this topic through a more philosophical, theoretical lens. You guys know I study psychology, so I gotta add the psychological spin to it. But I'm also going to kind of give my own, personal opinions with this too. So hopefully you guys enjoy, and feel free to share your comments below, interact. We're going to go ahead and get into it. So, one of the figures that I've noticed, and it really inspired me, and it touched me when he said that he's interested in having more than one wife. And before I get into this, let's just give a little brief definition on what polygamy is for you guys who aren't aware, because there's some people like, what is that? I don't know. So polygamy is like an overarching term for having more than one partner. And it's usually in a marriage. It's usually in a sacred union, right? So there are two forms of polygamy. One involving a man, where the man has more than one wife, which that is polygyny. There's another form called polyandry, where the woman has more than one husband. So you have polygyny, man, more than one wife; polyandry, woman with more than one husband. Very interesting kinds of relationships. It's like is different than the norm. Most people usually are involved with one person. At least they try. That's called monogamy. They try to be committed to one person. But realistically, especially when you look at what's happening in America and the statistics in our country, specifically within the African American community, you see a common occurrence of black men with more than one girlfriend at the same damn time. Not just more than one girlfriend, but more than one baby mama at the same time. So polygamy is more of a formal relationship. It's organized. It's between all consenting adults, so no one is forced to do this. It's something that it's a mutual agreement between more than two people, more than two people involved in the relationship. You know, it could be a man with 2 wives, 3 wives, 4 wives, 5 wives, 10 wives, however many wives he can handle. And I just think it's very fascinating when I see men talk about it. When I hear men talk about their interest in having more than one wife, it fascinates me. Not only that, because I believe in polyandry, and I've made several videos on that before, so we're not really going to get into like my interest in having more than one husband, but just know I'm kind of setting the groundwork and the foundation of this video to know, to let you guys know that I identify with these men. Like, I can understand the general concept of why a man would desire to have more than one wife. From a political perspective, it makes sense, because you're building a family, you're building a community, and we know the importance of uniting as a race. Even though sometimes within Black America we know things, we don't necessarily do them. So I respect those people who not only talk the talk, but they walk the walk, right? And walking the walk isn't easy. So the first person that actually came to mind when I was thinking about this video topic, is one of my favorite scholars. You guys already know who that is. Dr. Umar Johnson. He is a school psychologist based in Pennsylvania. And I've heard him talk about his interest in having more than one wife. Now, he is not married, at least not to the public's knowledge, because I know he has been living his life lately outside of social media, you know, and which is a good thing, because not everything should be broadcast on social media. So I can respect that. But as to our knowledge, you know, he's not married yet. He could be courting some women. That's his business. But I know he did express interest in having more than one wife, and it kind of like, it got my interest. I was like, okay, not a bad idea, because I feel like I can respect a man who knows that he cannot commit to more than, he cannot commit to one wife, right, to one woman. Because you have men that try to play that role that they're monogamous, right? Like, oh, I'm faithful, I only like you, you're the center of my universe, like, it's just going to be me and you together forever, to death do us part. And the honest thing about it is that that's not realistic for a lot of men. They do that because that's what society expects. And in our country, polygamy is illegal. You can't legally have more than one wife in America. But there are ways around that. Like, people have created their own kind of, you know, unions where they allow it to happen. You do it, but it's not necessarily on paper, so to speak, right? Through the courts. And so I can respect a man like Dr. Umar Johnson, for example, who is honest about that, and he says, you know what? I know I need more than one woman. I know that I'm not going to just to commit to one woman, so I'm going to put it out there to let it be known that I am polygamous. That way, when a woman approaches him or he approaches a woman, they have an encounter, at least it's on the table. Because there's nothing worse than betrayal, that a person thinks in their mind they're the only one, and then they come to find out they are not the only one. So I definitely can respect Dr. Umar Johnson in that respect, and any other guy, any other man. And I'm going to mention another person in this video. We'll get to that later. But I just want to talk about Dr. Umar Johnson for a little bit, because I think his ideal is interesting, though he hasn't lived it out, and he probably won't on social media, because there is a risk. There's a risk to having your relationship publicized on social media. It just is, you know. People already have intentions to try to destroy, you know, public figures, especially within the Black community. Not just within the Black community. I mean, we see Donald Trump. He gets thrown on the bus all the time. And other political leaders, like, it just happens where, like, no one, like, if you are in the public's eye, you're not really immune to getting talked about, and, you know, people kind of creating false narratives about your life and your situation, you know. So I can see why a person like Dr. Umar Johnson would want to protect something like that. I myself am protecting my own relationships, you know, that you guys probably will never know about, because you just have to. when it comes to something so intimate, you know. And he has, of course, this interest in having more than one wife, but we know that he has children already, right? And so that's where I think it kind of gets tricky, because he has children already, and in the minds of some women, they're like, how can you have more than one wife if you didn't marry the mother of your children? And not only that, but, you know, of course, there's rumors that he's not taking care of his children, da da da, like, whatever, right? That's his business in terms of the financial part. But he even admitted to not having access to his children like he would like to. So that situation can be very complicated, right? Like, we don't know the ins and outs of that, and that's not really our business. What attracts me, like I said, was the fact that he is interested in polygamy. So that would be, I think, pretty interesting to be able to make happen. And he's not the only one living in America who has expressed that. There is actually a black leader who I have met face to face, and I showed you guys pictures that we took and everything. It was pretty cool that we kind of just met spontaneously in Hollywood. But Brother Polight, like, I have much respect for him. He's from Brooklyn, I believe. I know he's from New York, but I think he's from the borough of Brooklyn. And he's actually living the polygamous lifestyle. He has more than one wife, and I think that is beautiful. Like, to me, I'm just amazed to see when a man can do that successfully, right? Because we know not everybody has the gift of gab. Not everybody can fit that role of a dominant man. And I think it takes an alpha man to have more than one wife. And first of all, it takes an alpha man to lead a family and lead a relationship, right? And to sustain a committed long-term relationship. It just takes an alpha man who knows what he's doing. He has a respect for a woman. He knows himself. But even more so, an alpha man to be able to sustain a relationship with multiple women at the same time. And then not only that, but to create a community amongst those women that they get along with each other. They become like sister wives, like how tribal nations in Africa do it. Like, that's how it's supposed to be done. And they get along. Not to say they like agree on everything and they don't have any problems, but it's just beautiful to see that it can be done. And it's happening now, like in America, and he's not the only one. I'm sure there are others, but that's just the first that comes to mind. He's one of the first people that comes to mind, Brother Polight. And I don't know how many wives he has. I would guess 4, because I think I've seen a picture with him and his 4 wives, right? Could be more, because I think that he did discuss that he was open to having more than 4. Like, no cap, basically. Just unlimited, you know, however many can fit in their little dynamic that they have, you know. So, to each his own. But I like Brother Polight and what he's doing, because he's actually with his wives, and they have their family is all together. Children are there, like he's there, like the children. I think the most important thing to me is that the children are in that union. They are there, because it seems kind of awkward when you have like all these women and then your children are like nowhere to be found. Like, that seems kind of fishy, and then you are a leader and trying to project this image, this ideal in front of a community that follows you. Do you believe money plays a factor in it being successful? That is a good question, Rodrigo. Does money play a factor in his polygamous relationship being successful, or just in general? I would assume you're probably talking about maybe in general, right? I think money is a factor, because we do live in a country that revolves around money. We cannot take that factor out. You know, we live in a capitalistic society where money is important. You need money to survive. You know, so I think, though, and I'm not quite 100% sure, but I think within Brother Polight's arrangement, his marriage that he has with his multiple wives, like, they all contribute. They all bring something to the table. You know, it's not just like him being the sole provider and taking care of 4 women, but they all contribute something to that relationship, to that marriage, to that union that they have. It's a sacred sacred union. I think that is important. And I think politically, economically, it makes sense that everyone contributes something financially to the union. You know, I think sometimes that's the motivation for why people choose polygamy. I know from my own personal perspective, me doing polyandry, having more than one husband, that kind of would be one of the factors, an important factor in me arranging that kind of union between me and myself and more than one husband. I think that's important. Because you can build economic wealth that way. It's like likened to the idea of a man and a woman in a monogamous relationship coming together and building a partnership. And we have two incomes coming together, like two is better than one. So imagine 3 coming together, 4 coming together, 5 coming together. Like, it's just going to grow, 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 grow. Your economic viability is going to increase if everybody is bringing something to the table. So yes, I think money is important. You cannot rule money out. So I do have much respect for Brother Polygamy. Like I said, I think having the children there in that union, when you have those multiple women, it shows that you value family. Which for me, that is like the most important thing. The community, the family, like that is so, I cannot emphasize that enough. That's so important, because I think people get into polygamy for the wrong reasons, or they become attracted to it for, you know, of course, various reasons, right? But you gotta have values when you're doing something like that in order for it to really sustain itself. And I think his 4 wives have been the same wives, like, over years, like, over time. It's not like he has wives coming and going kind of thing. Like, they have been consistent. So much respect to Dr. Umar Johnson for his idea of doing that. Good luck to you. You know, I don't know where you are at in that process, but good luck to you in being able to make that happen. And obviously much respect to Brother Polight and successfully bringing that together and making it happen, because I just have much respect for that. So moving along to the most recent person whom I actually have been interacting with online and following for a little bit of time now. I say a little bit of time, I say probably several weeks now that I've kind of like intensely being interacted and kind of connected and tuned in to this person that I'm going to talk about for the remainder of the video. And like I said at the beginning, I have much respect for everybody that I've mentioned, every name that I've mentioned in this video. You know, I'm not of the persuasion, I'm not of the energy to come and throw shade and disrespect people. That's not who I am. But I know there have been people that have done that to all of these 3 black men. And I think it's wrong. I think, how can people spend so much time and energy like putting out false narratives and pointing out hate towards someone? I don't understand it. Like, they dedicate their lives to trolling, to picking apart people's lives just to paint a negative narrative of these people. I don't understand it. But in a way, I get it, because, okay, you're doing it for views, you're doing it for money, right? People, like, reinforce that kind of behavior by watching you and by helping you get these views, and that eventually can translate into you getting monetization for that. So I get it from that perspective, but from a value perspective, like, I don't understand. Just why? Right? And then they come with the rationale, because I have to mention this before I begin to talk about this person, because he's going through a lot. You know, all 3 of these men are going through a lot, but I know that this person I'm going to mention has been on a lot of persecution lately. And the trolls would try to develop a rationale for saying why they do it, and they come and say, oh, because I want to protect the black community. Same thing they said with Dr. Umar Johnson. I'm doing this to protect the black community. It's all about, I'm trying to protect the black community from these men, because these men are causing so much, I'm like, seriously, bullshit. It's bullshit. You're not protected. If you really care that much about the black community, you will be out there doing things, actively doing things for the black community. But tearing someone down who has a different philosophy and perspective on life than you, he's not causing any harm to the black anybody, any members of the black community. Not to say he's perfect. Of course, we all make mistakes, right? But he's not causing any harm. And I know there has been a recent situation that has happened. This person I'm going to talk about is, he initially called himself, I think, Nature Boy. I believe his government name is Eligio Bishop. And I think that's just a beautiful name. Eligio means chosen one. You can tell it's like a very spiritual name. Like, it's a name that has purpose and meaning. And his life has purpose and meaning. Everyone's life has purpose and meaning. It's just up to us to connect with that and find it and live in it. He's living his purpose. And I think that therein lies the reason why people like Dr. Umar Johnson, Brother Polight, and Eligio Bishop becomes like, they get under attack. They become targets for persecution because they are living their purpose. And that purpose revolves around leading a nation of black people in a different direction than what the society that we have obviously become subject to in America have conditioned us to do and to be and to become. Like, they are redirecting that ship, you know. And anytime you stir the water up, you know, you're going to cause some friction, you're going to cause some problems with the puppeteers, you know, who are pulling the strings in America and who wants things to look a certain way within the black community and go a certain way. Because, I mean, of course, we know that this entire society we live in is under control, right? Everything is regulated. Anytime there is a leader who has developed the prominence and the power to be able to effect change, and we're not talking about just a little ripple effect, but we're talking about major change, is become an influential force, there's going to be problems with that. People are going to resist because it's different, and that's just natural within human nature for people to resist change, to resist things that are different, to question. And there's nothing wrong with questioning. So there's a difference between a person who is curious about a person's behavior and their mission in terms of wanting to understand and ask questions versus a person who just develops their own narrative and has an agenda to destroy. Because there's so much bigger fish out here to destroy that is really doing harm to the black community, but you choose to target a black leader who means well. It just makes no sense. But I have much respect for Eligio. That's a beautiful name. But yeah, I think at one time he was calling himself Nature Boy, and then he evolved. And it's good that he's constantly evolving, because no one really has arrived. Like, no one is there completely. But we are constantly growing. You know, we set goals, we set milestones, and we reach those milestones, and then we go past those milestones, and there are new milestones and new goals, and we're constantly changing and evolving. And so now he calls himself Chief. He has a tribe. He lives in Panama, Central America. I think it's just beautiful. I think he's lived in different places in Central America. I know he's lived, I think, in Mexico. And I think he's lived in, I can't remember the other place. But he has lived different places. The most important is that he does live in Panama. He has his own tribe. He's removed himself physically from, he calls America Babylon, right? So he's removed himself physically from Babylon, which he looks at as a cancer cell. We know no place is perfect, right? But we know that America has an agenda. There are things that are happening. At least we should know. If you're conscious and you're awake and you have been paying attention and you're not like sucked into the vortex and so caught up in reality television, and the drama, and distracted by all of that you can't really focus on really what's important and what's happening in our society. There are things that are at play. There are agendas that are at play. There are operations that are at play that are designed to destroy us. That's just point blank. And if you don't see that, then it kind of makes sense why some people don't see it, because it's happening on a subliminal level. I mean, to me, it's very overt. Like, it's very in your face. Like, I can see it. A lot of us can see it. That's what we call ourselves conscious people, because we are awake. We can see things. But the level of sophistication of these operations has become so unique that if you're not really paying attention, you're not going to really be able to understand what's happening, what's taking place, on a systemic level in many different industries that are driven by capitalism. Let's say within the healthcare industry, it's no surprise why so many people are coming up sick with cancer. Young babies, are dying of cancer. Like, there are things that are happening. You guys do your research. So he, I guess, became inspired in his journey, in his spiritual awakening, because I know that even though he's from Harlem, New York, I know he lived in Atlanta, Georgia for some time, and I think that's where he started his videos, when he was in Atlanta, Georgia, and I've watched a few of those. He has a whole catalog of videos, so he's on YouTube under Carbonation TV. He has an Instagram channel and a Facebook, and that's also how you know that he's doing something positive and something life-changing, because they trying to get your voice shut down. They don't like that, So he, had his earlier videos when he first started on YouTube. I think it was when he was in Atlanta, and he started his spiritual awakening. And I guess in this process of his spiritual awakening, here comes the helicopter. But in his, okay, I'll let it pass. It is a beautiful day out here in LA. That's one of my favorite lines. It's beautiful day in LA, because it is. It's like in the 70s, I think. You can feel the temperature cooling down. So, in his spiritual awakening, I guess he became inspired, to like really start living what he was preaching, and in that he decided to pack up, and leave the U.S. and go and live out in nature. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because I myself, I love nature. Like, I'm outside now. I could be inside doing this video, but I just like to be outside, to be connected, to the universe, to what's natural. It's a different energy when you're outside than when you're inside. And so, yeah, he decided to pick up and go out and live in nature. And he talks about his experience living out in nature, and really living out in nature, like sleeping outside, And of course, like, he, has been criticized, because they're like, how can he say he's living out in nature and he's living now in a house? In a very nice house, elaborate house out in Panama. But I think it's not so much the physical dwelling that he lives under as it is his philosophy, his practices, and his mission that he's on. That's most important. That's really most important, what he's doing. And so beyond him living out in nature, like, he believes in certain philosophies, and he talks about like the 5 sciences. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but I'll give you guys a briefing for you guys who haven't heard, which I think is pretty cool. So he studies biology, he studies astrology, he studies quantum physics. So I was just like, okay. he studies melanin and grounding, which grounding I thought was pretty unique because we also, as psychologists, we study and practice grounding techniques. So I think I'm like, okay, I'm with you. I see you. Like, we hear it, we hear. And so I like was attracted to him because of that. You know, like when a person speaks of substance, like that is what attracts me to them. Like Dr. Umar Johnson, he's speaking truth, substance. That's what attracts me to Dr. Umar Johnson. You know, even though I've never met him in person, there's a certain energy. And when a person speaks truth, the ears, the mind can hear that. And our heart gravitates towards that. You can't, I mean, it's inevitable. You know, you can't resist that. You can't resist the truth. And so obviously that's what attracts me to Nature Boy. He speaks truth, what he's saying. Now, he's a human being. He calls himself a demigod, also a god in a sense, you know. But he's human at his core, you know. So of course humans make mistakes. And going back to this whole idea of him being interested in polygamy, this is the interesting part. And let's see how long I have been talking, because you guys know I can go on and on. Okay, I'm going to try to make this video 60 minutes. Let's see. That's the challenge of the hour. Because I do have a lot to say, but I will try to say it concisely. So he, you know, has his interest in polygamy. And he lives his life on social media. And you guys know I started earlier talking about like the dangers in doing that, and you know, the sacredness of living, keeping your personal life private, you know, off of social media. Like, it's very intimate, and sometimes you just don't want to disclose that. But I'm grateful that he does, because he's a teacher, he's a professor, he's an educator. So the best way, and I even said this to him, like the best way to educate a people is to show them. We go to school, right? We open textbooks. We read those textbooks. We research articles. But there's no greater way of learning than seeing with the eyes. I mean, doing, if you can do it, right? Which some have. What is that? Actually doing it. You learn by doing. So putting yourself in that environment and actually putting into practice what he's teaching, that's a way to learn it, which some actually have, and I commend them, because that is a bold move to just go out and do what he's talking about, what he teaches. But for me right now, where I'm at, like I've already prefaced at the beginning of this video, is that, you know, I'm working towards my PhD, and that's an investment that I have, you know. So as he calls it, an attachment, I have attachments here in Babylon or in America that I definitely just can't, I don't want to, you know, at this point, just drop, because I've invested way too much. But people have kind of left, you know, their attachments, including children, here in America to go and live out in nature with Carbon Nation. And that's the name of his tribe, you know, that he has created out in Panama. It's called Carbon Nation. Very unique name. And they are learning through that experience. And there's so much to learn, but by me not being there, I'm still learning, you know. I'm not part of Carbon Nation necessarily, but I'm influenced by that. I'm influenced by his tribe, his information, what he's teaching. I'm motivated by it. I told him this, you know. And so I've learned, you know, some things in watching. And you guys know that, you know, I study psychology. I study human behavior. So this is very fascinating to me to see him live out there. And that's the reason why I went to this video, to talk to you guys about it. And feel free to share your comments below. But in him showing us his life, I think we have learned so much for you guys who have been keeping up. If you haven't, go check him out on YouTube or Instagram. He has videos out there. The trolls have their own videos and narrative about him, but you may be able to find some of his videos where, you know, he gives you a behind the scenes look of his life, living as a man with more than one wife. And at this point, last time I heard him say, I think he has like 7 wives, and some may say, well, damn. Like 7 women, like that, like, dude, you can handle that? Can you handle? I think that's like the biggest question he gets asked, like, dude, can you handle that? You know, mentally, physically, sexually, like emotionally, can you? Obviously he can. He's doing it, and I think he's doing a great job. And this is not something he has just started. Like, I think he's been doing this, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he's been doing this for like 5 years, like with his nation out there on foreign soil with his tribe. And I think that's pretty, that speaks to his wit, that speaks to his character, his ability to be able to create a nation outside of America in a totally different country that is foreign to him, and to attract the attention of like a lot of people, thousands of followers, you know, with this. And yes, people have come and left Carbonation. They've come to where he is and left. Come and leave, because that's what happens in life. You know, you find out, okay, this isn't for you, you're not gonna stay, or something happens, you get triggered, fight or flight kicks in. You know, for you guys don't know, fight or flight is an automatic response. It's an autonomic response that happens. It's part of our nervous system, you know, central nervous system. Like, it's something that you don't really have conscious control over. I mean, you can, but in the moment when it happens, you react. And I think a lot of times people do that. And I have a person in mind specifically that I'm thinking of that did that recently. Actually, his mother of his child, you know, most recent child that he had. She calls herself Velvet now, but she was going by the name of Eliana. And they had a beautiful baby. And I think there were some things that, you know, didn't sit well with her. The idea, you know, of not being the only wife in the picture, the only woman in the picture. I think that piece right there is interesting. It's very interesting because for people to go to Carbonation, like, I don't think anybody goes out there blind. I know that there's a wife that did come and leave named Umar from Atlanta, Georgia, came and left Carbonation, that claimed that she didn't really know much about it, like she didn't really do her research about it, So she's making up, you know, kind of excuses or reasons for why it didn't work out for her, because she was like saying that she was ignorant, you know, or blinded to the truth of what it actually stood for, what it actually is that he's doing, right? So now it just so happens that a helicopter, I guess it's LAPD, is going to fly over. But we're going to continue this video anyway. So I don't think that is necessarily true. There has been some debate about, like, oh, is it really true that she didn't know? Like, does it really make sense that you're going to go all the way, travel so many miles away from your home to go to a place that you know nothing about, to go live with a group of people you don't know anything about? Like, you know, you did your research, and I think I saw like one of her videos where she say that she had been following Nature Boy Chief, as he calls himself, for like at least a year. So if you've been following a person before, you come on now, you know some stuff. You can get the gist of a person's like character and their personality. You guys ain't gotta follow me for a year to get the gist of my personality, right? And I guess I know some people may say that, oh, well, people's online persona is different than how they really are in person. Yeah, it can be slightly different, but honestly, the things that we've seen him portray, the way he has portrayed himself on social media, that's the reason why he got so many trolls and haters, because he lets his authentic self show. Whether it's the good side, the intellectual, the spiritual side of him, which sometimes people like to say, oh, he has different personalities, but it's just everyone has different personalities. We all have different spiritual selves. We all have different facets of ourselves that come out in different scenarios and different situations. So he has, you know, the so-called good side that people gravitate to, and he has, you know, under certain conditions, the dark side, you know, that comes out. His human side, pretty much, that comes out. So for her to say that she did not know that or see that, know that side of about him or whatever, makes bullshit. He puts himself out there for the world to see. So that's complete bullshit. I just have to call it. Bullshit is bullshit. But knowing who a person is, and then you go out there and then you realize that, okay, you get put in a situation that ruffles your feathers and makes you feel uncomfortable, and your true value system is tested. Because if you are going to a situation like carbonation where you know this is a man who is involved with more than one wife, you know that's his attraction, you know that's what he preaches, that's his whole philosophy, this his identity is wrapped around that, right? And then you're in it, and then you're like, okay, I'm not really feeling this. Whose fault is that? Is it his fault or is it your fault? It's more like your fault, right? Because you don't fit in that, you know? Not to point fingers at anybody, but I mean, like, come on. That's everybody makes their own decisions, right? What you choose to do. So I think with that situation, like, it's unfortunate that Eliana, or Velvet, you know, his baby, my most recent baby mom, just, she picked up in love. Now, I can't give the details and all of that. This is a long story, and I don't really know all the details, but the gist of it is just that she was just dissatisfied. She felt uncomfortable. She felt mistreated. You know, there was some talk of abuse, which, by American standards of what abuse is, could possibly have been abusive. But when you're talking about a different culture, that's likely, right? Like, if we, like, American women, black American women, we go, leave America, and a lot of us are talking about going to repatriate to Ghana, West Africa. And we go and try to live within their culture, their society. We may witness and experience some things that we may feel could be abusive or wrong, you know, because we're comparing two different society, two different cultural systems here. So of course you're gonna, like, there's gonna be some friction there. You're coming from an American society culture and you're trying to assimilate, adapt to a totally different culture. Your culture is gonna rub and sometimes cause friction against the other culture that you're in. That's the whole process of acculturation. I studied this, you guys. This is the meat and bones of my dissertation, by the way. One of my variables I'm looking at is acculturation. So I know this stuff. And that's why I think this is so fascinating, because we're talking about these different cultures, American culture intersecting with a totally different culture that I'm sorry, I was going to say Dr. Umar Johnson, but in Eligio's Nature Boy's mind, that he created this new culture. In a sense he did, because he has his own flavor to it, but it's nothing new under the sun. So what he's doing, the polygamous relationship, living as a tribe in nature, that's something that is inherent within African culture. Sorry you guys. Sorry you guys for the helicopter noise, but that's something that the culture that Eligio, aka Nature Boy, aka Chief, has created there in Panama is, like I said, it's nothing new under the sun. So it's something that is inherent within African culture anyway, you know, and many different other cultures across the globe. So it makes sense. I mean, what you see happening to me is not a surprise. People are like, oh my gosh, you know, she left, or oh my gosh, like, some women are getting upset and they're not liking what's happening. Of course you're not going to like it. American women, like, we have to be honest with ourselves. If we go take ourselves, our Americanized selves, and go to a different country and live in within a different culture, we're going to, like, eat the food and be like, what is this? I mean, we want to become more African-centered, but we go and eat African food, I'm like, it tastes different. We're not used to that. It's different. It takes time to adjust. I think the only thing that somewhat surprised me about Eliana's reaction to trying to adapt to this new culture of living in a tribe is that she had been in it for 3 years and then she left. Like 3 years? 3 years, yo? And you leave after 3? Like, you should, this is like old to you by now at 3 years. But then also take into consideration the fact that she had a baby. And we know that's a huge adjustment. When a woman has a baby, oh my gosh, like you guys who study childbirth and pregnancy and the hormonal changes and psychology, how childbirth affects the mind, a woman's mind, emotions, like she's changing. She's becoming a mother, a different person. So, not to say they didn't have conflict before she got pregnant, because I'm sure there was conflict, but that it always adds another layer when a woman has a baby to a relationship. It just adds another layer. You see that, and that's why I think there's so many separations in relationships in America. We ain't talking about just a foreign country or culture, but just even in America, you see a lot of separations in relationships because there's so much stress. Like, I don't think people understand the gravity level of stress that happens when a woman has a baby. She goes through that change. Her body, her mind, her biology, is changing. Her physiology is changing. And especially if it's her first child, there's fear. And so we talk about the fight or flight response. The fight or flight response. When you are faced with perceived danger or harm or threat, you either fight, which means you stick it out, you resist, you stay in it, you fight it through, or you flee, you flight, you run, you go. Like, it's not even something you think about because, like, they compare us to animals, but it's like an animal instinct. You get triggered. The mind, this is how it protects itself from harm. But even in that scenario, one can say, okay, she did that. It was a natural response. She perceived danger or threat, so she got up out of there, right? She left carbonation. But in the same token, one can also consider if there's trauma in the picture. Because when a person has trauma, people flee from situations that they get triggered by very easily. And sometimes it's without reason. You get what I'm saying? So there's a difference. I need to differentiate between when a person flees in response to their autonomic processes of being afraid in a situation, and they flee to protect themselves as a natural response, as a healthy natural response, versus when a person does that and there's trauma there and they do it without reason or rationale. You know what I'm saying? And it's an unhealthy response. And I've seen that happen even in therapy. Like therapy, like, because people get triggered and something that, it's like the mind cannot, the subconscious mind, let's make that clear, because we have different levels of the mind. So the fight or flight response is a part of the subconscious mind. It's automatic, autonomic response. That when we are faced with something that could be danger or threat, we automatically respond to it in that way. It's like within milliseconds, you know what I'm saying? It's protected. We get up and go, That's why I was talking about bug come on us. We just do that, not even thinking. It's just a reflex, that happens, right? And that's a subconscious mind. But we also have a conscious mind that can filter those responses. And so when we are in a, like as they describe it, we in a higher self or a conscious self, we are thinking more consciously, more aware of what's happening. We're able to detect, okay, there is a perceived threat, But then the conscious mind goes a little bit further to do some reasoning, to do some rationale, to do some analysis, to say, is this a real threat, or am I misperceiving it as a threat? There is a difference. And so it's up to, of course, her. That's her life to live, Velvet's life, to determine if it being in carbonation was a real threat or a false threat. That's her life. You know, she's made her decision to move back to New Orleans, Louisiana. Nolo. And she's a beautiful girl. She's like early 20s. Beautiful girl. Nice accent. They had a beautiful baby. But I think it's just unfortunate that, you know, it's like nature. I don't even say nature. I don't even think that's a natural response to what we see happening. But it's almost like what would happen in American system, what's happening in the American system, where you see women just and men like separating from each other. They're having these fallouts, and we see broken families. Like, pretty much they picked themselves up physically, positioned themselves in Panama, and the same thing has replicated itself. It's a replication of what we see happening in America. So I know that Eligio's ideal is to create this new nation, and he's doing his best. And there are people that are sticking with him. So I'm giving much credit for that, because there are people that are sticking to it, are practicing those principles and putting it in, you know, into play, right? Living it out, and they are fighting through their issues. They're working through it. And then there are those that leave. And it's unfortunate, but I think it's interesting to see how, like they say, you can take a person out the hood, but you can't take the hood out the person. So the same system that we internalize, that socializes us in America, which we call Babylon, is embedded in a person's mind. Like, it's a part of who they are, their identity. Going to a foreign country with the idea of creating a tribe, you know, and having multiple wives and all of that, it's a good idea, but you also have to consider the things that still live within you. The mind that has been shaped by this Babylonian society we call America, right? That doesn't change. And it's not just on her end. Like, some people, like, he's pointing the finger, okay, well, she has these demons, you know, she went back, Velvet, on both sides, right? Because there's some things about, you know, we can talk about her and we can talk about him. There are some things about Eligio that he has his flaws too. Unfortunately, we all have our flaws, right? And I think he recognizes that, whether he will admit that on camera. You know, it takes a lot of vulnerability to be able to admit, to say, you know what, I overdid some things, which I think he did say he pushed her too far, but he didn't really go into detail to say this is exactly where I went wrong, you know, in that. Like, for example, and I heard him say this recently, and I'm just like, yo, he is wild, and like, he's taking this philosophy, and I get what she's saying, like, using it for his benefit, and that's like human nature to do that, right? Like, that's like a selfish thing. You can have this idea to create this nation, just like that Umar Johnson. You can have an idea to create a school, right? And it's all for the good and have good intentions. So that doesn't mean like you sometimes don't have the human side come out of you. We all fall at times, right? So you can have like those ill intentions sometimes that slip out, you know, because like he said, he's from New York, he's from the hood. I'm sure he's not like 100% cleansed from that hood hustle mentality kind of thing, right? So for example, recently he mentioned, and I have to wrap this up real quick, but you guys see how passionate I am about it. I can go on and on. So recently he mentioned how he he described like the rationale for why he believes women are his best students in his tribe, who come to his tribe and I become a student of his teachings, he says that women are his best students because he can infect them. When I mean infect, I'm not talking about a disease, just with his energy, with his teachings, with his DNA, basically. That's how he sees it. He can infect them with this knowledge through having sex, through his semen, because his semen carries his information biologically, carries his DNA, and he believes that information is embedded in DNA. The information that he teaches, that he knows, that he is speaking out, through his mouth on video, that information lives within his DNA. And so he's saying that he can transmit that information directly into women sexually through his semen. And I'm like, he may have a point. I do believe that through sex, people can transmit and share DNA. Obviously, we can't, because that's how STDs happen, right? So not just diseases can be transmitted, but other things within our DNA, information that's coded within our DNA, can be transmitted. Positive things, healthy things, right? I think intelligence can be passed down through a person's DNA. So, yes, I agree with that to a certain extent, but one from the outside can see how that can be misinterpreted, or that he can be kind of using that to his advantage just to like have sex with women. Because if he's saying this, think about it now. If he's saying this out there to the universe, to the world, through the internet, that I have like special semen, and if you take my semen in your mouth, you're going to become wise. I mean, he literally kind of said that. You're going to become smart. You're going to have the same power that I have. Everybody gonna want some of that. That's like the holy water that these preachers be selling. Like, you're gonna want some of that holy water because you believe that this holy water has power. Is it the holy water that has power? I mean, is it the water that has power, or is it your belief in the water, like the placebo effect that they talk about in psychology, that the power lives within? Is it your faith, or is it the water? Is it his semen, or is it your belief that his semen has this powerful information that is going to enrich your life, and make you a god? So I think it's like a play on words. It is, right? So I think, not to knock his hustle. I mean, you do what you do, right? I respect the hustle and everything, but it's like, I think it's important as leaders that leaders are careful in their delivery and what they say. And I get it, a lot of stuff is just sensational material for the airwaves, right? Because all publicity, in some people's eyes, is good publicity, right? And so the publicity helps build his following, and helps spread the word and get more people informed about the information and what's happening, in Carbon Nation, so they can join. Because it's like pretty much his tribe, his nation kind of is like wide open. He has like an open invitation. Like anybody can join as long as you're curious about it and you are willing to learn. And of course listen to him and subject yourself to him, which is another component that I did not really touch on yet, but the whole power dynamic situation. So him being chief and other people who join are like his students, are subject to his rule. I think within the context of polygamy, when you're dealing with women who have been socialized by an American system that especially promotes feminism, that women are equal to men. And feminism is not a new movement. I know, like, it kind of took speed, like, 30 years ago or 40 years ago, when it first kind of started to evolve, but it's been around for a long time. This whole idea that women are equal to men, like, that's something that's been in the works for a long time. And so we're talking about generations and generations of American women being socialized to pretty much do the same thing that men are doing. see themselves equal to men. That's a whole nother discussion as to whether or not are we equal to men. No, I mean, my personal opinion, I would have to say no, in the sense that we are designed, physically we're designed differently. So why would that inherently make us equal to men? Now, in terms of power, like when we're talking about spirituality, I think that we're equal in that sense. You know, like we of importance and in value. We're equal in value, but in terms of our physiology, our biology, you know, like we're different. So no, we're not equal. I don't want to be equal to a man because I have my own unique characteristics that make me a woman, and I appreciate those. So why would I want to be equal in that sense? No, we're not the same. I don't want to be the same as a man. So that's just my take on that. But I think psychologically, when you have American women who have the perspective, this belief that, you know, they're equal to a man in power, right? Think about it. You're taking an American woman, a Babylonian woman who has this belief, whether she admits it overtly, because it's embedded in her subconscious mind, and that comes out. You're going to see it. So I think with Umi, it was overt. Her feministic views were very out in the open. She doesn't hide it. But some women, they do a good job at hiding it, and they portray themselves as if they are submissive. And they have submissive qualities, but deep down inside, there's some feminist views in there, and they don't really want to submit to a man. And so think about that. When you take that kind of woman out of America and you bring her to Panama, and she's with you in Panama, or wherever country they were in at the time. Was it Costa Rica? I think it was Costa Rica. And then things happen, you know. If a man is trying to set the rules and lay the groundwork, and you got this woman here that's just like, I'm smart, you can't tell me what to do, kind of thing. I'm not listening to you. I got my own perspective and all of this, and you make him feel like he's not powerful. That's going to create fusion. It's like trying to change a person's mind. You know how long it takes? Like, you know, I don't think people understand. People are very resistant to change. And I had this conversation with Eligio. People do not change easily, man. I'm in the industry of trying to help people change for the better. I work in mental health. I'm trained to become a psychologist. This is what I study. This is what I do. It's all about working with people towards change. Because we can't change people, but we can work with people to make a change in their life for the better. And research has shown, experience, practice has shown, it is not easy. It can take years and years and years to revamp, to recondition the mind of a person. Like Marcus Garvey said it best, it's easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men. That's the reason why Dr. Umar Johnson says that he wants to build a school for boys. I mean, he works with adults, sure enough, but his main passion and his heart is with those young kids. Because even though their minds have been shaped, and they're still being shaped, right? Because you're like, in the womb, the mind starts to be shaped. You're taking the messages even in the womb, but at that young age, it's not solidified as much as it is when a person reaches adulthood. You know, their mind is still more malleable, but they still have been socialized. So let's not think that a kid's mind is just blank slate. Oh no, I mean, my dissertation shows that. I'm working with young kids now, doing assessments with young kids as part of my dissertation study, and I'm replicating the dog test study. And for you guys who aren't familiar with the dog test study, it was a study done back in the 1940s, pioneered by Dr. Kenneth Clark, who showed that as early as preschool age, pre-literate, before children even enter school, they already have developed these biases. They've been socialized. Their mind has been socialized to have a negative bias towards their own race, black children. We're talking about black children here in the U.S. So it's not easy changing that. It can be done, but it's not easy. That's just my dissertation, part of my dissertation that I'm working on now for my PhD. So, in looking at grown-ass women, even though they're in early 20s, sweetheart, their mind, they have been through so much socialization in America from age zero, to early 20s, that you think just them coming to carbonation and you giving them knowledge, yes, and they can be very fascinated. Who isn't fascinated with learning something new? It's the novel experience. Novelty is what inspires people because it's something new. But even after people have been exposed to new information, research has shown there's a homeostatic pull. People go back to their old ways of being. They can get the new information, even make efforts to change. And you may see changes in their actual behavior, not just what they say and what they think, but what they actually do. But yet still, people revert back to their homeostatic ways, the homeostasis of how they have been living their life, because that's most comfortable to them. It's not something that people do consciously. It's just naturally that happens, So I think it's important, just from his perspective, to be able to understand that. And I shared that with him. I don't know if he received it, but I did share that with him. So for him to just take that in, to people, I'm pretty sure he knows this though. Like, people just don't change, and even himself. We talked about, the wives being able to adapt to this new tribal system, but even within himself, he has Babylonian ways of thinking, too. So, and I think even the idea that when he said women take in his knowledge through his semen and that makes him smarter, even though he didn't say it directly, but I think it can be implied from that he means women are dumb or less intelligent, because you have to value a woman. If you're going to deal and accept American women who have a certain confidence about themselves and they believe, like, okay, a man is smart, I'm smart too, right? Not that men are smarter than women. And you bring them in and you accept them into your tribe, there's a certain way you have to interact, with that. You have to, just like you need to feel like you're valued, you're a man, and you need to be able to feel like you are dominant, you have a dominant position. A woman needs to also, she has a desire to feel important too, and her importance for a lot of women is tied to their intellect. It's tied to their ability to be able to articulate themselves and be perceived as intelligent. That's how they get their power. You have to know what kind of woman you're dealing with, And so Umi made it clear, like, hey, I'm more than just being in the kitchen. My value as a woman is tied to my intelligence. It's tied to my artistic expression, things that she's interested in. So knowing that thing about her that's unique to her, if he wanted her to stay, which I don't know if he wanted her to stay or it was more about getting her to fit his mold, because it can go both ways. You can do both simultaneously. You can feed a person's desire based on their attitude and their characteristics, but meanwhile at the same time slowly nurture them so they can adapt to your mold. So both processes can happen at the same time, but you can't just snatch a person from you can't, like, that doesn't really work when you try to snatch a person. It's like taking an addict. They've been used to cocaine or whatever drug, meth, crack, and you just snatch that substance away from them. No, they need something to replace it. Whether it's exercise, it has to be something to replace that. So, and it's a process that happens over time. It has to be a process, a step-by-step process. So you're kind of weaning them off of their Babylonian thing, but you have to replace it with something else. It has to always, whatever you take from someone, it has to be replaced with something else. That's important. That's what I've learned, that in working with people, and I'm sure that can be applied to his tribal system that he is operating in Panama. You know, you have to make people want to feel valued and appreciated, whatever that is. You know, and I think there are times where he probably feels that he needs to feel dominant, and I think that's the complicated part. So I'm not saying like what he's doing, his thing is easy, because he has embarked on a very difficult challenge of being a tribal leader and being chief. So kudos to you, Eligio. It's not easy. If it was easy, a lot more men would have 7 wives in their own tribe. It's not easy. That's why some men like, you know what, I'll just stick with one. Because having 2 wives is just too much, right? It's not easy, but being aware of who he is as a person and knowing, like, I'm sure he knows his own demons, as he calls them, his demons. Knowing that, you know, considering his background, that he grew up without a mother to nurture him. That's why he talks about sucking his thumb. He grew up without a mother to nurture him. You know, he didn't have that love. And when a person grows up without love, they're going to constantly seek that love. Anywhere in a person's childhood development where they are lacking something, which means they have a deficit in their developmental stages, things that the normal person usually has that's necessary for normal, healthy development of a human being, when there's a lack thereof of whatever that is, that person is going to grow up seeking that through adolescent and adulthood and throughout their life. It's like chasing after the wind. Just chasing after the wind, because you can never catch the wind. And they will never be able to catch that thing that they supposed to have in childhood. Because the reason why you're not going to catch it, because you were supposed to have it in childhood, and you only get one childhood. And the fact that you didn't get it in childhood, you'll never be able to get it. The love that you were supposed to get in childhood, you're never going to be able to get it as an adult, because you were supposed to get it in childhood. Does that make sense? You will be able to get it if you were supposed to get it in adulthood, but you were supposed to get it in childhood, and you missed that opportunity to get it in childhood. So you spend the rest of your life trying to get it. And for him, Eligio, it was love. He missed an opportunity to be loved and nurtured by a woman. So it kind of makes sense from a psychodynamic perspective, and I'm bringing in psychology into this, that he craves a woman's love, and he needs multiple women to fulfill that void that will never be filled, unfortunately. There are ways that it can be simulated, but deep down inside, his inner child knows the difference. It knows the difference between a mother's love and a woman's or a wife's love. It knows the difference. You know, so it's unfortunate. You know, a woman can love him, but that inner child is still missing that mother's love. And it's sad, and I empathize with him. It's sad to not have the very thing that you needed as a child. So he's, you know, he has his own demons. He has pain. And I'm sure it can be very disappointing as a man who is void of that mother's love when he doesn't get it from the women. It can stir up anger, resentment. The resentment that he has towards his mother is transferred onto these multiple women that would never be able to fulfill that need. And it can be transferred in many different ways. It can be verbal aggression, physical aggression, passive aggression, different kinds of aggression. but at the core is resentment, and at the bottom of that resentment is pain. And I said that on one of the videos. I say he's in pain. It's clear. He cried. I mean, he's cried several times in his videos, you know. And I think it takes a lot of courage for a man to cry. And I respect him for crying, releasing that pain, just releasing it. And the fact that he's very transparent about his childhood and his upbringing and his history and his current life, that's a gift to the world. That's a gift to not only to the world, but to the women that he's intimately involved in. And when, beyond Nature Boy, beyond Carbon Nation, when a person reveals to you their life story, their history, their childhood traumas, when you love them, if you know how to love them correctly, because, I mean, we all want to love somebody, right? We all want to give love, but oftentimes we don't know how to, unfortunately. You don't know how to love a person who never had his mother's love. You just don't know how to. You've never been taught that. Why should you have been taught that? You know, it's not like it's mandatory that you should know that, right? But it's something that if you love a person, you're going to take the effort to find out, how can I love this person in the way they need to be loved. For him, if he wants 7 wives, obviously there's a void. He needs love, a woman's love and attention and care. Times 7. Times 7. For all the years that he missed his mother's love growing up as a child, he needs that amount of love. And one woman, he admitted, one woman cannot fulfill that. And it's okay to admit that. Who has a perfect childhood? I don't care if you grew up in the freaking suburbs. I don't care if you grew up in Beverly Hills. Nobody has a perfect childhood. So none of us can talk. None of us come from perfect families. So we all got some fucking skeletons and shit in our family history. We all do. No matter how beautiful we look on the outside. So who are we to judge? I respect Chief Eligio for being so transparent with his life. You know, because it's a amazing story. It's amazing life lessons that he teaches us by just turning the camera on his life. You know, he needs to write a book and do a documentary, because it's beautiful, and I think his intention is pure. He makes mistakes, of course. Of course. We're talking about a child who didn't have a mother growing up, who was passed around in foster care. I've worked with children in foster care. It's not a pretty thing, man. You know, they have a lot of emotional and psychological disturbances, you know. But that doesn't dictate their life trajectory and who they are. Not when you can take control of it and you can say, you know what, I realize I have this history, but I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to at least attempt to take control of his life. And the man is trying. I don't like when people attack people who are doing their best with what they have. And they are trying. And he has apologized to his most recent baby mom, his wife, for the disagreements that they had, the problems that surfaced. I'm sure he tried to work it out with her before she left, but you know, she got triggered and just reacted spontaneously. Some people are very impulsive because they learned that through their own adaptation in their toxic environments to quickly respond to situations, you know, to act before thinking. when you think something through, you got to take time just to weigh out, okay, how is this going to not only impact me, but how is it going to impact this person, everyone involved. And in that situation, it's a lot of people involved. It's a whole tribe. So how is, for Eliana, she would ask herself, how is my leaving going to impact not only myself, but my daughter, her father, and all the other women and people in the tribe? When you just react, you don't think. The frontal lobes, this whole part of your brain, shut down. Zip. React. Impulse. You know? That's a fight or flight. You know, fight or flight mode, you know. So that's their life, but I'm inspired by it, and that's pretty much my take on polygamy, black men in a nutshell. I think that, you know, it's something that can be done. You know, I think it's a beautiful thing. I think that, you know, his story, his life story, and even as it's still unfolding, it's a good learning tool for us to be able to benefit from, you know. And I think that it's appropriate that we show respect to him and just support and know that no one is perfect. People call him a narcissist. I think he even confirmed, was like, yeah, I have narcissistic tendencies. And I spoke on that. It makes sense when a person is devoid of love and they're rejected, feel rejected at least, from that devoid of love growing up. When you feel rejected, you feel worthless. You feel no one cares, no one loves you. As a way to adapt and cope with that, you have to build your own self up. So much so to the point where it can come off as a little snobby, you know? But that's your way of coping and responding to life. That's your way of doing it, and it happens naturally. Some people aren't even aware of it. Like, I didn't know that I come off that way to people. This is just who I am. This is how I've learned to adapt, you know, with life. And if it serves them, they continue to do it. So it's not that narcissism is necessarily a bad thing altogether, because having this grandiose idea of yourself and this heightened level of importance in life, not only in your life but in other people's lives, can serve a purpose, you know. Obviously it has for him. He's built a tribe around that. You know, he's building a nation of followers, of people who follow a certain philosophy that is really healthy. It's not a bad thing what he's doing, what he's teaching. If you actually look at his teachings on Carbonation TV on YouTube, it's good stuff that he's telling us. Like, he's pouring out positive motivation, saying that you are a powerful being. You're God. You know, you have God in you. You're capable of doing great things. Like, how is that negative? That's all positive stuff that he's teaching, you know. And I feel like ultimately that's what his mission is. People will take a person's, it's sad that people will take a person's like mistakes and then disqualify them completely. Just completely X them out. Nope, you're not a leader. Nope. One mistake. Nope. You got 4 baby moms. Nope. X you out. But that's his life to live, you know. So I think it's interesting, you know. He does have 4 baby moms now that all live in America. He calls Babylon. And it would have been beautiful that he could be with his, you know, mother of his children, you know, and have his tribe all together as one big tribe with all the children together. That would be beautiful to see that. But it probably would be boring. No one probably will watch that. It's just like, it's just too fucking perfect. No one can relate to that. Most people can relate to the baby mamas, because y'all who are watching are baby mamas or baby daddies. So y'all can relate. And I think that's why it's beautiful. That's why he's a chosen one, as his name says. Eligio means a chosen one. God chooses imperfect people to carry out his perfect mission. And I think that I'll end there. I want you guys to comment below, share your thoughts on this video. Catch you guys later. Love you guys. Bye.